If we were a professional operation, this would be done by somebody else. But it's really wonderful to be back in LA. Blanche was worried that after all of the dynamic energy of being in England for the last 3 months, that coming back here would be somewhat of a letdown. But I think it's really important to understand that all space is the same. That every space has its own dynamism, its own configuration, and being here is no more or less than being there, because it's all here. There is nowhere else but here. And if I were dragging that with me and trying to compare everything, I guess you could make distinctions, but the joy of being is simply the joy of being, and it doesn't quite matter where you be, just that you are being, and that you are aware of that. This was the first time I've ever gone without teaching for such a long period. This was like 3 months without sitting in front of people. And those of you who've listened to the talks from London, and particularly from Manchester, are aware of the dynamic that existed there, that existed without being any kind of formal teaching situation. It was probably the best lesson I've ever had in teaching, because I never sat once with anybody. And I never taught in any direct way. And I just sat still. I just sat still, kind of off to the side a little bit, and remained both still and present. And the joy that erupted in that stillness flooded through this being and filled a rehearsal space and then a huge 2,000-foot auditorium. And everybody felt it. And I didn't do anything. It just happened. I'm not sure even if there was any kind of source for it. It just was happening. And by the end of the 3 months, you have never seen a more loving, joyful group of people in your life. Everybody was hugging everybody every day. I would sit down, and the most beautiful women and the nicest guys all came over and were hugging me. They don't even know why they were hugging me. And there was just so much love wafting between the stagehands and the lighting guys and the actors and the singers and the dancers, and it was pure joy. And I totally understood what was happening. And it had to do with my doing nothing. And it was the best teaching, because you don't have to do anything. You just have to be. And most of us don't trust that. We don't trust being. We really think you have to be something, you have to do something, you have to activate something, and it's not true. It's not true. I'm not going to go back over that period right now in talking today, but if you are curious and haven't listened to the talks, they're really kind of an ongoing tutorial to this person, but also to anybody who wants to hear about it. It was really a remarkable experience and remains in play, because it's going to continue again until the end of July. So all I can do is bring you back reports from the front, and the reports from the front are that there's no battle to be fought. There's nothing to do. and that all of us struggling to have a spiritual life are struggling in vain, really, because ultimately it's not a struggle. It's the giving up of the struggle. But I'm really learning so much, kind of moment to moment, and this class was extraordinarily instructive. What I really understand at this point is that you don't need a spiritual life, you need a life. Period. You need to have a life. You have to have a life that you don't fight, that you accept as it is. Whatever that takes, you have to build and construct a life that you are at peace with. Until you do that, having a spiritual life will be complicated. And really, the true essence of having a spiritual life is getting your life to work. If your life is working, you have discovered the truth of spiritual practice. And really, that's what Rudy taught. Rudy was brilliant in that he truly understood that your life is your spiritual life. Holding down a job, building a structure, building the muscle of a practice, like meditating, or going to the gym, loving people, caring about others, working hard, structuring yourself so that you become something substantial. And when you become something substantial, you can begin to let go of the struggle. It's hard to describe how much life wants to cooperate with this, how much the entire universal energy wants to give you the life you want. I won't say it's the life you desire, but the life you want. If you truly have a sense of what's meaningful in the world, in your life, you will probably discover that a lot of that has to do with relationships, with having loving connections. It has to do with feeling that your day is worthwhile, that getting up in the morning is meaningful, that walking down the street, something real is going on and not just what's going on in your head. Finding a real life is very, very much what's wanted in human experience. And life wants you to have it. It is trying to give it to you. But if you are devoting your life to desires, to ego fulfillment, you may be disappointed. Because what life wants to truly give you is something deeper than ego fulfillment. Not that ego fulfillment isn't meaningful and part of the structure, but it may not satisfy your ego, but it will satisfy you. You can end up in a state of amazement and awe all day long, with nothing that you dreamt of coming true. I know that's hard to believe. And for many people, you really do have to satisfy those dreams or make the biggest effort possible to get them. Because you only can let go of them when you realize they're not going to happen. They're not meant to happen. It's tough. It's really tough. But trust me, we all have dreams that are not going to come true. But the thing you most want in life will come true. It will come true. It's hard to express the amount of joy that I experienced walking to work every day. Nothing in my history prepared me to loving walking to work. But I would get so much wisdom, knowledge, information, clarity, beauty on that walk that it could fulfill everything I'd ever needed in a lifetime. I would look at people on the street, and I've never had this before, their whole life would come into me. I knew their story. I knew the story. I knew where it began, where it was going, and where it was. I could see those who were going to find spiritual enrichment in life and those who were going to miss it entirely. I could see where the conflict was, where the tension was, where the disappointment was, where the lack of substance was. They were just like dream figures walking through this thing, and they had no idea, and the likelihood of something stopping them in their tracks and going, hey, was not great. And I have to tell you, for the sake of the universe, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter whether they get that hey moment. At some point, I think, in every human life, but it may be, I don't know about lifetimes, but I suspect we need multiple lifetimes in order for that hey moment to occur. Like, oh. And you suddenly wake up. But the universe is not in a hurry. It's not in a hurry to make that happen. On the other hand, some of the people moving through this dreamscape are in a hurry. And every one of them is in this room. Everyone is sitting in this room. The rarity of this, of people coming to know how to be, how to wake up, how to become real, is profound. It is so rare. You can go through a whole life and never meet anyone open to talking about this. But each of you has come here, and I think you've probably all come here for your own reason. And I would say in many cases your reasons are completely beside the point. If you were trying to articulate to me why you were sitting in this class, you would probably articulate the wrong thing. You're probably here for all the wrong reasons. And I could actually feel that in the class today with certain people. I actually felt that the reasons for being here were so strong that until they were completely dismantled, they would never have a true spiritual life. Because the reasons to come to spiritual practice for many people truly obstruct that practice. They are so rigid, so locked in, so needy, that this thing can't find its way in, because it's trying to find its way into a structure that wants to be blown apart. So the job here is to blow those structures apart and help you find why you're really here. And why you are really here is something you cannot articulate. It's not in your brain. It's not in your mind. You cannot give it any kind of logical formation. It's here because something in you is driven unconsciously, emotionally, and spiritually to this awakening process. And you wouldn't be listening to these words if that wasn't true. And my job as I sit here is to break through the inaccuracies of your expectations, the fear that you bring along with the desire, the doubt, the hesitation, the constriction that you place around this effort. Because ultimately, there is no effort to be had. There's nothing to do except be. Just be. But, how do you teach that? How do you know how to just be? Well, I'll tell you the secret is you do it all day long. You do it all day long, brilliantly. You guys have no idea how good you are at just being. You just don't know it when you're doing it. And you're doing it, I would say, 90% of the time. You're just being. But there's no witness to it. There's no awareness of it. The only thing you seem to be really aware of is when you're uncomfortable in your doing and being. When you're judging it, when you're finding yourself wanting, or you're finding yourself extolling how wonderful you are, or you are in a battle zone, or a war zone, or an emotionally discombobulated state. That's when people are sort of aware of themselves, but I'll tell you, the thing you're aware of then is your ego mind, not yourself. The very thing you become aware of is the false self, the limited self that isn't really you. It's just a projection of a you. And what happens is that self, at some point, is obliterated. But it's obliterated usually in people who have a hunger for that to happen. In spite of all their own resistance to it, there's a hunger. And that hunger is manifested by you getting into this space right here, being in this room, driving here, whatever you do to make this possible. You're here because something in you wants to let go of the doubt and the confusion and the unhappiness and the ego-minded struggles that you live all throughout your life. And so you come here to learn the lesson of it, or maybe to have magically this thing happen. Suddenly Bruce will say something or do something and pow, it will take place. Well, I don't think that's true. Mostly what I'm here to say is get a life. Get your life working. Get this thing firmed up. Find a way to be satisfied. Find a way to live well. And then you do this thing that Rudy called practice. Spiritual practice is learning how to do something that will become automatic and effortless when this awakening takes place. You won't have to try to surrender. You will live in a state of surrender. You won't have to try to be loving. Love will pour out of you. You don't have to try to be conscious. You will be conscious. You already are that. But you're not aware of that because you haven't awakened to it yet. Even if you never awaken in this lifetime, living in a state of practice gives you all the benefit of having awakened. All of my spiritual years of practice were no different than what's happening now, except I don't have to make any effort, which is nice. It's a great thing. I don't deal with Bruce very much. Bruce doesn't raise his head very much. There's just presence. And when Bruce does appear, it's fine. You know, it's part of the whole thing. The whole context is that there's a person and then there's the vastness of you. Most of us are only aware of that little tiny thing that we call ourself, but that thing is so minuscule and so, I was going to say unimportant, but I have to say in the scheme of things it's totally important. Your ego, your struggle, your ignorance, your doubt, all of that stuff, it's crucial to the whole process, as is learning how to let go of it. You have to make an effort to become effortless. It's essential. You have to do the practice in order to let go of practicing. You know, anybody who does something over and over again with their life often comes to the point where they realize they're not doing that thing. My best writing happens when I'm not writing. I'm there, typing, but I can feel there's something else doing it. Being in Manchester, I had to keep writing these new scenes for the show, and this wasn't like writing it and then reading it over and working it out and seeing if I liked it. This was going in the show that night. So I would write a scene, and the next thing I know, these actors are acting it. So if I had brought tension to that and the old Bruce stuff to that, it would have been awful, but I didn't. I just wrote it. And it went here to there, and it was right. It was right, because it needed to be right. And it's a wonderful thing to observe. When you are really effortlessly working, things work. Whatever it is you're doing. So, I have to figure out what exactly I'm teaching now, because things have changed in some way. And I am learning it as I go. And as far as I can tell, I'm probably going to teach the same thing. As far as I can tell, this is an energy work that works. That somehow or another, there's something happening between us. You can call it an emanation or a transmission or a radiation of energy that knows what it's doing, and it seems to know how to go into you and throw these little switches that are obstructions and complicated areas and smooth them out so the energy moves more directly. Not a lot of people teach that. I don't think that brings enlightenment, but I think it brings changes within you that make it easier to have a life, to have a real life. And your life will start to work better, your material daily life. I sometimes call it dream life, and then I hear Paul saying don't call it dream life, but it is, there's a dream life and it's also real. It's also totally real at the same time. So you're having a life right now that is more real than you imagine and much less real than you imagine simultaneously. And work it out. Work it out. And working it out doesn't mean make it all happen. It means make peace with what it is. Be peaceful with what you are. And then it aligns in a way that allows this separation to take place. Because as long as you're in battle mode with your life, it probably won't happen. Not that it doesn't. I've met enlightened guys who actually were walking through their daily life, and then they were in a state of absolute confusion or new awareness for 2 years. You know, Eckhart talked about sitting on a park bench for 2 years after this happened, because it's so astounding. But it also can be unbelievably simple. Unbelievably, and everything is different and wonderful. And all I wish for anybody in this process is to arrive there. Whether this is the best way to arrive, I have no idea. Whether it's even a way to arrive, I have no idea. But it worked for me. So I share what worked for me with you. And every one of you, as I looked at you today, was radiating back at me something that had grown in 3 months. Every one of you, and some of you, I haven't seen you, Scott, in a long time, but really changed. Real transformation. Carol. I see things in people that demonstrate a new wholeness, and it's really beautiful. And so I see what I would call progress on some level. Progress ultimately only means something when you become free of the person that you think you are. But living a life of freedom, even while you're that person, is possible, and it can be a wonderful life. So, as far as I can tell, I continue to teach what I'm teaching. I've actually discovered a part of Rudy's teaching. It's called time and space. Time and space teaching from Rudy, those of you who read about it, is exactly what I'm talking about. It's the same thing. And so if you discover that in his writings, I forget which book it's in. Spiritual Cannibalism. Time and space is basically this work. It's an evolved work, but it is it's the work. And I'm not as schematic as Rudy was. I've never worked that way, but I am intuitively expressing what Rudy had clearly understood and structured. But he will say, and I will say, whatever the structure and whatever the knowledge, be prepared to blow it all up. Because ultimately, nothing you know works. Nothing you know is it. It is none of the above. None of the above. The answer is what's happening in the moment. Each of you is moving toward that realization. Each of you has it available to you if you truly want it. My sense in the end is you need to live a life that truly demonstrates your willingness to be responsible to the most remarkable condition of being or non-condition of being imaginable. If you are willing to do that, to truly surrender, to let thy will be done, if you are really willing to give yourself over to something unimaginably great and let it live the life that you think you're living, you will have the most remarkable life imaginable, with the only exception that you won't be there. And it won't matter. It will not matter. You will not miss the fact that you're not there, because you are there. You are there. There's never, ever, ever a time when you are not there. So, this is a wonderful period of learning for me, and I'm sharing the process with you as best I can. It's very much everything I learned from Rudy, but at a new level of insight and a new level of unfolding. It's kind of 24/7, literally 24/7. It goes on all night long and all day long. And it's not even mental, compartmentalized knowledge. It's just endless flow of awareness. And it is extraordinary. And it is available to everyone in this room, because it's not mine. It belongs to every human being in the existing and pre-existing and future universe. It's available. It's completely available. And all I do is wish it for you. And when I sit with you, honestly, all I'm doing is sitting with that part of you that wants to be known. Wants to be known. And as I sit with that part of you that wants to be known, it vibrates. It becomes thrilled. I can feel it in you now. There's a part of you, because you're here listening to this, that's very connected to these words. That part of you that is vibrating is the very self that is waiting to express its awakening. It's right now. It's at this instant in every one of you. It's just there. And there's going to be a part of you that wants to hold on to it on the way home, or to think about it, or to listen to the talk again, or whatever, but I'm telling you, it's there this second. And it doesn't go anywhere. You just go. You just go back into, I got to think about that again, and I should have written it down. Forget that. All you need to do is be present again. Be present now, all the time. Be that living entity, and you will have a level of liberation and freedom and joy and wonder and awe in your moment-to-moment life that will be worth it. So, keep at it. Let's see where it all goes. I'll be here for the next 2 weekends. I'm sorry I'm so infrequently available, but I keep these things going, these tapes, so you have some access to the words. As you all know, in the end, it has nothing to do with what I say, and it has everything to do with your simply being who you are. Any questions today?
I've got a poorly formed question.
I have a poorly formed answer.
Which is that how, reflecting on the Paul Hederman about the idea of, like, we come together as we're these fish that come together trying to learn how to be wet. And how do we come to a class to work with this, and somehow have a better understanding that this is not about coming to gain something that we're not. Sort of like, oh, Bruce is moving his hand. I'm not. Help me become something I'm not. How do we gain that?
It's a great question. How How do we have a class to get something when you already have it? That's the conundrum. I mean, I've considered the idea of not sitting and teaching like this. Just sitting here and we'll just sit. You know, let's just sit together. And we can talk, I can talk, you can talk. It's a way of doing it, but I think you would find it awkward as well. It would like be, well, I can sit at home, which is true. Why should I sit with Bruce? And that's true. On the other hand, when I'm around awakened guys, people, women, there's something going on. And I'm aware of that going on. And I mostly want to talk about it. A lot of people I know who have awakened don't sit still. They don't do this. They just, go about their day, whatever that may be. So there's no real answer to that. What I would say is, when you come here, lighten up. Just lighten up. Don't come with expectation, just come with openness. And when I sit with you, and I see where it can be open more or deeper, which somehow I've been able to do, then I will go to that place and I will open it. And the more relaxed and available you are, the easier that is to do. Some of you are very screened, and getting in is hard. But I have learned pretty much through 5 years of doing this, how to do that. I can get past most of your screens. But it's easier if you just sit and go, I am present. And the stuff that wafts into you is pretty major. You really walk out of here with a lot of stuff. And if you can think about it, that you're leaving here without having it, but it just is, it's much healthier than thinking, I want to take this home and hold on to it. Because that's not possible. Try taking a scoop of water home with you. Where's it? It's like 2 seconds out of the class, it's already gone. But the water's always there. Always there. It's always available. You turn on the tap, whatever. You need the nourishment you need is always there. You don't have to come here to get it. But the nice thing about coming here to get it is it's there. It's available. You don't have to wonder where's it going to come from. Every week it's going to be available to you, and every day if you want it. I mean, you can turn these things on. It's really in the tapes. The energy's in the tapes the same way it was in Rudy's tapes. It's in the words. And there are a lot of other teachers. We don't have to just come to Bruce. There's so many teachers expressing all this stuff. And one day you'll be doing it exactly the same way. I mean, you teach now, and I have to say, when you teach, I know that Terry's not teaching. I know that you get out of the way and let this thing happen. Everyone who teaches here, that's the case. You teach because you are able, for at least an hour or whatever, to be absent of you. And that's a great thing. What will happen at some point is you will be absent of you entirely. It will feel like what it feels like when you teach all day, all night. You will just walk around emanating this thing. But the minute you try to own that, it will kick you off that throne so fast that you will not know what hit you. So you cannot try to bring back an ego mind. I mean, people have. I see how it works. It's insidious. It keeps trying to say, hey. But it has no value. It's a stupid thing. It's an inert thing that wants credit for stuff. Let that go. Just be the thing that teaches through Terry, and learn to let that live as long as you can, as much through the day as possible. You'll find there'll be parts of the day where it suddenly kicks in. Go, oh. Even after awakening, you discover there are times where presence is enormously vibrant, and there are times where presence is very quiet. And there are times where ego, like people come up to you as Terry. If you're in a business situation, they will come up to you and ask and demand you be Terry. So, be Terry. And you be Terry as long as you have to, and then you stop being Terry. And then you realize it's all part of the same configuration. And it doesn't matter what you are, because you're one. You're not separate. You're one. And that one includes everyone and everything that is, and ever was, and ever will be. That's what you are. And when you know that, it's like, now what? Now what? And that's when they tell you, now what? It begins to unfold this unbelievable awareness of everything. And you walk around I keep describing it as a fire hydrant of love, which is my particular configuration. Love just pours out all day long, unless it doesn't. And there is this huge sense that you can be of help to people. And you do it from a completely silent place. In other words, you can shake someone's hand and know that in that moment you have just transmitted something that will alter their life. It's amazing. And there's no need to say, look what I did, because there's nobody who did it. It did it because it wanted to do it. And you really begin to learn that everyone who suddenly is in your presence is in the presence of themselves. I know that's odd, but they are with the self, their self. It just happens to look like this person, but they're with themselves, and they are talking to themselves. And some people talk to themselves suddenly with enormous freedom and energy. Some people are kind of, they don't let you in. And you really totally understand immediately how comfortable someone is with themselves, based on how they talk to you. I absolutely know where their blockage is and where their obstruction is and why they can't be with themselves. And then I can, as the self, help them, which is what I now do, which I love doing. It's all I want to do. And I want to do it quietly, privately, secretly, if you will. Because I don't want to get in the way of it. I don't want anyone thinking there was a person doing it. In the class, you still think there's Bruce. But other people, they don't know. They don't know. So you become a true servant of thy will. Be done. All day long. All night long. And everyone here can do that. Every person here can do that. Long answer. Anybody else? Okay. Next week. Thank you all.